youths, especially youths, are very hungry. When I tell you hungry, they're hungry for change. You could see it in them. The whim, the linden, all the rallies I look at, the youths especially, they are there. You look between the crowd. You're hardly seeing these adults, but you see these youths. When I see them with all these shirts, like I feel so overwhelmed. Like I just want to. I wish I can jump across and be with them there.
You have spent some time with Mr. Moses Nagamuto, or I saw a photograph with you and him holding hand. What do you personally know about him that make you feel so confident that this change will be positive for Guyana?
Not really, Mr. Moses alone. I have joined politics in 2006 with the encouragement of the late Sankar. I have Dr. Rose, I have Sace, I have a lot of people who have educated me towards this politics. And I learned a lot from all of them, and where I become to know Mr. Ramjatan, Mr. Moses. Now I know Mr. Granger a little. And from what I've learned and I gathered is that, and the way I see the people with him, I feel there is a great, great change coming to them.
And you feel inspired, you feel empowered. You
Yes.
describe your feelings. Don't let me put words into your mouth. Describe your own feelings.
The things he said, the things, mostly when I see the crowd around him, it makes me strong being a Guyanese. It made me just want to be there to witness this change, this transformation of everything that is going to happen.
And let's go
I
back a
went
little.
back in October. I want to give it a speech. I went
Sure.
back in October
Uh-huh.
because of some youths that they were craving to have a change, but they were on the AFC before the coalition. I went to train them and equip them with computers and everything to go on the ground. That's foot soldiers, and reach out to the world when they go into the country, in their communities, encourage people, tell them what you want, and see if they're gonna want the same, and post it, show them how to put it on social media so the world can see it. And today I am seeing that. I'm seeing the youths that become these foot soldiers is building Guyana to the top.
How does that make you feel that this is a success? That your effort is a
It
success?
makes, as again, it makes me feel so proud and strong. Proud Guyanese. I don't want to stay here another day, honestly. I just want to go. And Says know that, Says can tell. I don't want to stay here another day. I
And,
can't wait when I'm going to go next month.
and I'll tell you something, Selwyn. I think an increasing number of people, especially in the Queens, Brooklyn area of New York, are feeling this way, which means that inward migration that you were alluding to earlier, will become a reality, because a lot of these people have accumulated some level of assets out here, and they're willing to take it back and take the risk. They know Guyana. I mean, people like Kamla, for example, know Guyana like the back of their palm. So it's not like they're going into they're jumping blindly into a society that they don't know about. And they're, in their own little way, making their investments, will be able to transfer. If every Guyanese that goes back hire one or two persons in a little activity that they're involved in, you can imagine the quantum effect that will have on the economy. And the whole idea is that working and living in the US of A, one of the things we diaspora Guyanese have gotten is we've equipped ourselves with a standard of work ethics that will do well for America, for Guyana, sorry, because we will be able to now help the people back home to get a better understanding of what are the minimum standards expected from the countries that will be buying your products. Because at the end of the day, For Guyana to be successful, we got to export, export, export. So whatever we're going to be exporting, I mean, anybody will tell you when they go to Patma or whatever, how the fruits will be packaged, how the meat will be packaged, what are the certain standards you have to meet. So anybody who goes back there will be bringing all those ideas that will be able to help the entire society evolve to a different level, so that we can raise the way we're packaging thing, helping to get the markets aligned, and just generating wealth. I think the whole idea of Guyana, the biggest mistake this Jagyo Ramatar cabal made is that they thought about themselves before they thought about the nation. If they had thought about the nation and had started to invest a lot of money rather than in this Kingston hotel, that $12 billion could have gone into building what we call agro packaging and processing facilities all across the coast. In Berbice, in Essequibo, in West Demerara, in East Demerara, wherever there's agriculture, they have one of these facilities that what is going to be able to prepare food for the export market. Mm-hmm. We would have been so much further down the developmental plateau. The other thing that they were supposed to do, and they have not done, they were supposed to build an international quality abattoir in the main rudimentary areas, meaning cattle and goats and sheep and so forth. They were supposed to build one in Letem. They were supposed to build one in Upper Quarantine, and it wasn't built. One was also supposed to be built in West Berbice, where there's a high concentration of cattle, where they could have, abattoir to slaughter these animals and package them to international standards, so you can lift them, put them on a plane at Chedijagan Airport and ship them off wherever, so that the market can get our products. None of these things were done. Rather, they spent all the money on ICT cable, $12 billion so far and counting, and still not working. They spent $10 billion on the $11 billion on the hotel. They've spent about $6 billion on the road to Amila, and that road is starting to deteriorate already. They spent $47 billion on a sugar factory that is performing worse than the sugar factory that the British people left with us at Skeldon. Can you imagine that? That's $47 billion went down the drain. They've lost $1 billion on this specialty hospital, which was paid to the contractor, and he disappeared with the money. You see, this is all the challenges we have, and these are all monies that could have been channeled to productive activities that would have been creating jobs for the people, that would have been creating products that were going to go overseas and create new inflows of cash for Guyana. We have not done any of these things. So that is why I said time for change and time to rebuild, because we got to build all of these things from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think they were allowed to get away with these exorbitant wasteful spending?
I'm very candid here, and I'm glad you asked this question, because people don't want to hear this. I believe that the opposition under Mr. Corbyn was useless, absolutely useless. It allowed the PPP to grow into a monster. And it's only in 2011 the opposition really started to arrest the PPP. 2011, when, and I gotta commend people like Ramjatan. Ramjatan took the fight to the PPP. And then, of course, everybody else fall in line. And I know that this is a comment that some people will not want to hear. But I have my suspicions, and I'll tell you, I am very disappointed that Mr. Hoyt was carrying a good battle, and then he, of course, by God took him from us, and then the opposition at that point went into a lull, and they, there's something that happened when Jagdio's pension was, or the presidential pension was approved. that I'm not pleased at all about.
How did that happen? Tell us. Or how do you
I
think that happened?
I was not in Parliament, so I don't think I'm equipped. But what I do know is that at the same time that the presidential pension was increased to that absorbed number, the leader of the opposition pension was also increased during the same time period.
What is
And
your speculation?
I, I don't want to be speculative. I don't want to be mischievous, but I'm very disappointed that during that period from the death of Mr. Hoyt to the incoming of Mr. Granger, that period was the worst period in governance in Guyana because of the lack of backbone from the opposition.
Let's talk financial model says. That's your area. I mean, give us an idea, give us a model. If you were asked to advise the government on some economic or financial policies, what would you recommend?
Well, first of all, we have to arrest the way we procure goods and services in Guyana. And I'm grateful that some of our thoughts are continue to make their way into the platform. The first thing is we have to have a procurement commission. The procurement commission will be an independent body of the presidency. The executive has no business in deciding who gets contracts. That should be the business of a professional group that is managed by highly skilled professionals, people with integrity, and it should be a committee whereby everybody is self-checking each other, checks and balance, and then Parliament on top of that can also censor those transactions to make sure that fat can be removed from procurement of goods and services. And I'll give you an example. I think I raised this the last time. When we were procuring the services for this specialty hospital, Mr. Ramjatan raised it in Parliament and says, this thing is not regular. And the reason for this, there was a company called Federloyd, which has built many specialty hospitals globally. And then there was the other tender, which what they call them, I can't remember it, Syringer, who has never built a specialty hospital in their life. But because Syringer had a relationship with the PPP already, the Syringer won the contract. And this is wrong, because winning a contract should be going on a couple of things. One, your core competence, whether you can do the job or not. And two, the price. So that we can have the best value for money for Guyana. The other example is when we were procuring for the road to Omaila. Your boy Fit Motilal got the contract and ended up walking away with $600 million, which did not get back. It was not paid back to the government and the people of Guyana. We lost $600 million on that project. And now the project is costing us 4 times as much as what the engineers said is the engineering estimate. So we really got a problem in that area. And I do not believe politicians, and I will be one of the persons foremost in the fight to make sure that politicians are not involved in procuring of goods and services. Of course, we all know the famous example of how we procure medical supplies in Guyana. 80% of it is procured by the best friend of the former president of Guyana, who sells medical supplies to the health system at sometimes 10%, 10 times the real value, 10 times the real value of ketrazone and many other drugs. So
how does one get away with that, though?
Because the executive, the politicians are in charge of making the final decision on who gets which contract. In cabinet, they make this decision. So it's about deals in cabinet. That is why you can find the minister who has done repairs to her teeth to the tune of $2.1 million, the cost of a whole car in her mouth. She can now jump on air to defend these kinds of things because she has no choice. She got a whole car paid for by the people of Guyana in her mouth. So that is why she got to talk like that. And they take care of each other. That's the whole idea. Everybody taking care of each other. And this has to stop because it's less than 50 persons in Guyana who are walking away with so much billions of the people's money. At the end of the day, we have to understand this is the people's money. It is not my money. It's not Kamla's money. It's not your money. It belongs to those taxpayers who pay their taxes every single month. Now, the other thing is I wanted to tell you this is while the PVP is doing all this spending, you know what they've been doing? They've been borrowing and they've been borrowing and they've been borrowing. And the challenge is between 2006 to now, the debt for GDP is basically a rough estimate of the size of the economy, has moved from 60% in 2006 to 70% of the GDP. So the debt is starting to move in the wrong direction.
Wow.
So we need to, this is all the changes that gotta be done. We gotta cease this borrowing. I mean, Guyana cannot afford to continue. I don't know if the developed countries, I don't know if you saw, I wrote a letter to the press and part of my blog on this whole concept of how we were able to get the debt write-offs and so forth. But I don't think we'll get a chance like that for a while.
Sis, I'm glad you brought it up. Let me go to the chat room, read this comment, and then I want you to give us a synopsis, if you can, of that same letter, that whole debt write-off process. P in the chat room said, why is it that we have not heard of all these shortcomings in the news, and it has to take the medium for us to be educated? Are we going to put these government officials before the courts to recoup these monies?
Kamla, you answer that because I'm a futuristic thinker. I just want to grow Guyana. I know there's a school of thought that that we should jail them all, but I don't have any energy to spend behind these crooks. But I know it should be done. But Kamla, what do you think?
For me, they should all be held responsible.
Held responsible. Yeah.
Jail them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know I've been saying that, sis.
Yes.
Kamla, when you talk with your colleagues, your friends and families and so on, is this a general sentiment that the country needs to recoup some of its money and the country should go after these people?
Yes.
You think this is fair to go after them?
Yes, it's fair.
Mm-hmm. P again said, what of our NIS monies that are being borrowed and being used to finance these projects? I personally, as a Guyanese, want these monies back.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, NIS is now technically insolvent, meaning that if it didn't have a government guarantee, NIS would have been collapsed by now. It would have totally collapsed. But it has what we call a government guarantee, and that's the only reason it's afloat. But that is a liability that is there and that has to be dealt with. The first thing that got to be done is that NIS got to write its books, because NIS has close to $6 billion on its books as an asset collectible from CLICO. Now, you and I know CLICO is dead and NIS is getting zero of that $6 billion. But they continue to walk around the world saying to everybody, we have a collectible called CLICO for $6 billion. And that is why they're pretending that the books are balanced, but the books are not balanced. If you remove that $6 billion, NIS is in the deep, deep red. And that's why I'm saying it's bankrupt. But because of the government guarantee, the government has guaranteed that they will pay all of the contributions if there's any shortfall. But that should not be, because why should taxpayers be called upon to fund an institution that had enough resources, but because the Jagdeo regime decided that they're going to lift $6 billion and invest it in CLICO, which was a Ponzi scheme, why should people support that thing? And that's why I'm saying I'm a futuristic person. I want to go to developing Guyana, but there's a strong school of thought that a professional team of like high-level FBI forensic auditors should be hired by the new administration to focus exclusively to go after the bank accounts of all these jagabats, I will call them. They're not jaganites. They don't have any. The closest to J they can get to Jagan is that they're jagabats. These jagabats, I believe we should have an international forensic team. You want to pay a highly qualified group of North Americans or Europeans to come to Guyana and focus exclusively on these people, their activities, their bank accounts, and everything. Because we, the locals, we got to focus on the future. We got to focus on making sure that the 40%, all those police women, those nurses, we got to make sure that they get access to housing, access to a better salary, access to better education, access to a more responsive health care, access to opportunities so that their children can have a better opportunity at being something and growing their economic wealth than their parents. So we got to focus on that question. I think if the locals split themselves in two and try to look forward and look backward, we will fail. We have to focus on the future and hire a professional team to focus on the past.
I got it. Talking about the future, I want you to give us, well, I mean, go back in history in time and tell us about Guyana's recovery and how the debt got written off.
Well, we've been listening to Jagdew in particular in his bashing of Carl Greenwich. And I dare anyone, I always expose wrongdoings, but I dare anyone to find one line where it says Sasenarine Singh has attacked Carl Greenwich. I never attacked him, and I know why. Because I know the history of the finances of Guyana. Carl Greenwich, I attacked the attitudes of people like Corbyn because I thought that he was misguided in working with Jagdeo. But Mr. Carl Greenwich has always been an honorable guy, and he's always worked for the interests of the people, and his record shows it, and I'll show you why. Jagdeo always runs around the place on all the platforms and all the press conferences saying, oh, we turned around Guyana. Me, Jagdeo, we turned around Guyana. And it's a blatant it's a misinformation, and it's mischievous because it doesn't have an iota of truth in it. He was part of the deal. There was a relay team that was turning around Guyana. But if we all know what a relay is, it has a starting runner, the middle two runners, and then the final runner. Yes, Jagdeo was the final guy who had to cross the tape. But who was the starting runner in the turning around of Guyana? It was
Hoyt. Mr. Hoyt.
Right, it was Mr. Hoyt and Mr. Carl Greenwich in 1988. I don't know if anybody ever saw the speech when Hoyt came to Washington, D.C. in 1988 to meet the American government to lobby for support in making Guyana credit worthy again. So what happened in 1987? This is what happened. Not just Guyana, there was a team of people, especially places like Oxfam and stuff, that were lobbying governments, the British government, the Canadian government, and so forth, saying, man, there's so many people dying in Africa, in Latin America and Asia, that we need to really do something about this debt problem. So finally, in 1988, when the G8 countries, which is the rich boys, met in Canada, they made an agreement at the insistence of the finance minister from Canada that we have to commit to writing off the debt of the poorest country. So they developed something called a HIPIC program, highly indebted poor countries. At the same time, as soon as that information became public, Carl Greenwich worked with a team, people like Cecil Rajana, Carl Greenwich, who else? I can't remember them. But even the guy who's at state planning now, Clyde Roop-Chan, was in that team. And they set up something called the Economic Recovery Program. As a little boy, I remember shouting on the sidelines, "Empty rice pot." But that was, we were all propagandizing then. So I started. But the reality, when you read and you understand what happened there, the ERP was designed to basically piggyback off of what the rich countries had decided to do. And because of that program, it was presented to the IMF and the World Bank. The rich countries gave Guyana in 1990 the resources to pay off all our outstanding interest payments, thus making Guyana credit worthy again. Because you could have only borrowed if you're credit worthy. Right. And we needed monies to do, basic things like reform the public service, reform Gaisuku, reform bauxite. There were all these very important monies that were coming to us at almost zero interest rate. Some of them were even grants. But we couldn't get any of this unless we paid off what we had owed in interest payments. So all of that was done in 1989, and Guyana became credit worthy again. So Guyana became credit worthy in 1989. We were able to start paying our debts in 1990. Guyana was already starting to work via an IMF program in 1989 to turn around the country. So this whole debt question, this concept of starting to shave the debt, especially the amounts owed to the IMF and the World Bank and the IDB, it happened since then. It happened before 1992. And that's very, very important because, as I said, it's a relay. So Carl Greenwich did his part. Yes, he lost government in 1992, he and Mr. White. But as Garali, the good man he is, being a former deputy governor in the Bank of Jamaica, he became Minister of Finance after that. And he insisted that the PPP continue the ERP. Yes, they used to cost the ERP, but they continued it silently. And then as Garali went away, and then Barjagyo continued that whole trajectory. Now we got a total write-off of $611 million, which started more than a decade before. When that $611 million was written off, Guyana's debt dropped all the way to 60% of our GDP. But what I've noticed is since 2006 to now, we have borrowed over $400 million again. And we are now gone past 70% of the GDP in borrowed debt. So when they keep saying that Mr. Mosek Nagamutu don't know what he's talking about, Nagamutu is dead on target, but that is how they react to it. They can't erase his facts, so they attack Moses. That's a standard PPP operation. The minute they can't deal with your truth, then they switch gear to attacking the messenger. Mm-hmm. And when they can't handle the message.
Sis, let me go into the chat room for a bit. Just give me a second. P said, yes, so sad. This is painful for me as a young pensioner who is very worried about how I would be paid in the years ahead. Says, I think we are from the same school of thought because that is what I call them, jaggerbats. Corbyn is just as responsible, and that is why they never want Carl Greenwich in the limelight. Kitty Bourne said, I am fully convinced this new change of government is needed, and it is good to hear Sace acknowledge that the previous opposition was a failure. And P said, hats off to the IMF, the IDB, and the ERP. Well, it's a question. Hat off to the IMF, the IDB, and the ERP.
Well, I presume, we got to be grateful to the rich countries of the world to be able to, actually not the rich, the taxpayers of the rich country of the world, because they're the ones who paid service to all those debts for us in those years by giving us debt write-off. When we call it a debt write-off, it came off of our books, but somebody had to honor it. And it's the taxpayers of America, the taxpayers of Canada, England, Japan. These people they paid the debt for us. And so we got to be grateful. I'm ever grateful to America, because America is the land of opportunities for all Guyanese. I mean, we've done well in this country. I'm grateful to this country.
Kitty Bourne said, Kamla, I admire your tenacity and wish you well on your journey to Guyana. Says and Kamla, you are the first people I've heard recognize the relay leaders, Desmond Hoyt and Carl Greenwich.
Thank you very much, Selwyn.
You're quite welcome.
But Kamla, what, as a woman, I want to ask a quick question. As a woman, what do you think? Just tell me 3 things you think the new administration can do for single mothers in Guyana, because most of them are in that 40% poverty.
Create jobs for them.
Jobs. 3 things, not just jobs. What are the other 2?
Health-wise.
Better health care.
Health for them. And their children.
What can they do for their children?
School. Give them education. Save them from the sex abuse. The other day, I think a businessman was found guilty in sexually abusing a 6-year-old child in Amsterdam.
Yes, I read that.
They need to provide protection for those children.
Of course.
Thank you, Kamla. Says, I want to go back to P's question. She meant, what of the IMF, the IDB, and the ERP? Is there anything you want to add to what you just said?
Well, no, I mean, the point is Guyana is now out of an IMF program, because when in 2007 the VAT was implemented, Guyana scored an extra $30 billion in revenue. So we had enough revenue to not be in an IMF program. The challenge is we got revenue. Guyana got money. We're earning enough money right now. The problem is how we spend it, and that is the challenge. We spent $50 billion in 2003 on the health and education system. And you ask anybody who goes to the public healthcare system or the public education system, whether it's servicing them or it's servicing their children, and you will find the answer is a resounding no. So where are we pumping all of these monies? Just 2013 alone, we spent $50 billion on these 2 sectors. So clearly these monies are being spent, but I do not know where it is going, because it is not buying new value to add to the system.
Sis, we have come to the close of our show tonight. And once again, I want to thank you so much, Sis, for your due diligence and talking about the economics of Guyana, the economy of Guyana, and talking about and proposing change is very important. Kamla, same to you as a woman for coming on the show and talking about your views on suffering and how the nation can improve conditions for women, economic conditions for women. I want to thank you for that. We need more people participating. We need more Guyanese recognizing the importance of change, but not change as a handout or a gift, but change that requires, that needs action, needs commitment, needs dedication. And as Say said last week on this program, we need to be patient. When the change comes, we need to be patient with the new administration, because these policies that we are asking to be implemented do not show results overnight. So we have to be patient. Sis, any parting words, my brother?
I would like to say to all the people of Guyana, I am not going to tell you now what you should do. What I think, I know the Guyanese people are very, very intelligent. The voting population, I'm saying to you, vote like a boss. Vote for yourself. If you're not benefiting as a person, do not vote for continuation of your suffering. Vote to change your suffering. I am convinced beyond belief that I'm seeing something in Guyana where our people are telling the politicians, not the opposite way around, the people are telling the politicians now, we are ready to come together as one people. And when you see politicians are going to talk about Indianness and versus if a man call himself a Guyanese and they're upset that he's not calling himself an Indian, it means that that party is stuck in the past. You need to stay focused on your well-being as an individual. And if you believe that you've had enough of this, it is time that we vote for a change. Because do not say on May next year, May 2016, oh, the PPP this and the PPP that, if you went and vote for the cup. You cannot vote for the cup and complain. You got to vote for the cup and bear your chafe. If you want to move away from the punishment, you have to vote for anything but the cup. Anything but the cup, because the cup has brought tremendous amount of suffering to the people in the last 3 years. So that's what I wanted to say. And I think Guyana can repair. That's the final thing. I think Guyana can repair.
Let me just, before I get Kamla to make her final statement, the chat room, Kitty Bourne said, Kamla, are Guyanese of the understanding that the turnaround will not happen overnight?
I don't think it'll happen overnight, indeed. But in the first 100 days, I think we'll see tremendous change.
And P said the healthcare system is in a mess. The nurses don't even have a building to study and be trained.
They don't even have a bed to relax in.
Look at that. What is the position on that? Says thank you and would like to see you fully involved in the change after the dust have settled.
Kamla, I'm involved. I know I'm involved. The point is that I'm right now involved at a technical level.
Yes.
You know, I mean, in 2011, I was more involved at a political level. But right now, because of where I am, I really need to stay at the technical level. But I think Guyana will turn around because we have enough Guyanese in and out of Guyana when they combine their effort in this new world where we can connect via the internet and so forth, Skype and everything. We can actually be able to transform that nation. But it's very important that people stay the course and stop being fearful of the PPP. The PPP cannot do you anything between now to May 11th. You have to, especially East Indian people, you have to be like Kamla and break boundaries. You have to look them in the eye, and you even got to lie to them and say, hey, yeah, we're going to vote for y'all. But when you get into that box, let your conscience vote. Let your conscience vote, because the PPP will continue to lie to you. They will continue to mislead you, because it's all about deals for the friends and family, and that has to stop.
Any parting words, Kamla?
Yes. Say said a lot already, but thank you, Sayes, for allowing Mr. Selwyn to give me this opportunity to be here. It's my first time at an interview like this, and I want to say thank you again. My message to all my Guyanese brothers and sisters: on May 11, please come out and vote. In 2012, I was walking in the village of Agricola at 8 o'clock in the night without fear. I encourage them to walk, shake hands with everybody, encourage them to come out and vote. We want this changed. We really, really need it, and it must have it. Even if I have to come and walk with you, to shake hands, walk around in every village, every home, no matter who it is, hug them, shake their hands, and encourage them to come out on May 11th. I will be there, and I want to see this. I want to enjoy. I want to rejoice with you guys. Please, Always listen, encourage your families, friends, and everybody to do this. I feel like crying for joy.
Crying for Guyana.
Right for
Oh,
Guyana. That's a good mantra.
my grandkids want to go home to see, to have a. They like Guyana. They like the atmosphere, like everything there, and they want to go. My grandson is willing to go live with me.
You're blessed. But and on a final note, let me just read this in the chat room. Kitty Bourne said, "I am excited about the potential for change and wish you all well." And P said, "Let the ballot box speak." So thank you very much for coming on again. And to Guyanese, we are tired of the ethnic albatross that have been placed upon us from childhood before most of us were born, and we continue to carry. We have sat next to each other in classrooms on whichever school you went to, whether it was bench and desks or chairs and tables. We sat next to each other. We share our work. We sat down and we explained, we tutored and helped each other. Why then? Why then do we continue this nonsense? We are intelligent. Those of us who I call independence babies that were born in the 60s and 70s, we owe our country a debt of gratitude. We were well trained. By the time we went to secondary schools, we had the best of education Guyana had to offer. It is our obligation to shed this nonsense, shed this albatross, and commit ourselves, give back to our country. We have to find a way to stop this nonsense about you are of a different race, I'm of a different race, so we can't come together, we can't work together. We have to fight the politicians on this and hold hands and do what is best for our country. Thank you so very much, and good night.
Good night. Thank you.
You're welcome.